Welcome to Your Aha Life. I'm your host, Dr. Tonya Harris Cornelius. The Aha Life is a life of more joy, more purpose, and more fulfillment. Through these episodes, I will bring you stories of insight and inspiration to help you live the life that you dream about, the life that you are meant to live, your Aha Life. Enjoy the episode. Well, hi there. This is Tonya. Welcome back to Your Aha Life, the podcast. This morning, I have a wonderful new friend and guest. We're going to be talking about an interesting topic. I have Wendy Horng Brawer. Did I say that right, Wendy?
You did. Thank you.
Great. So I'm so happy to have you on board. And before you and I get into the conversation, I want to tell our listeners and viewers a little bit more about you. And so I'll read your bio. So Wendy Horng Brawer is an educator, an embodiment and personal transformation coach. She's a speaker and a business consultant. She is the creator of Whole Human at Work. That sounds interesting all by itself. I'm so excited about that. And what we're going to be talking about today, This Unbound Life. Unbound Life. Wendy believes deeply in the potential of each person. Too often, she says, we are bound by family and cultural expectations, which prevent us from accessing this potential and becoming our fullest, most alive selves. Bringing in her experiences as a longtime independent school leader and educator, she works at the intersection of organizational development, business strategy, and human development to unleash the potential within people, teams, and organizations with her company, the Intune Collective. Using somatic-based practices, we'll have to get into that a little bit to explain all of that, Wendy. But using the somatic-based practices, Wendy coaches her private clients to work and live from a place of passion, joy, and freedom, or what she calls an unbound life. Wendy studied at the University of Michigan, the Columbia University School of International Affairs, and has a master's degree in educational leadership. She is also a graduate of Seth Godin's Alt MBA program. Welcome, Wendy. I'm so thrilled to have you here. I feel like this conversation, which is what we'll have, so we'll have a dialogue together. But I'm so excited about it because I feel like just in the couple of times that we have talked, I've always walked away just feeling, I don't know, bigger, more expansive, more open, and a little bit like I found a sister in you.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, just from the very beginning, the conversation between us has been so easy. That's why I just say it's easy because it just flows so naturally. So welcome this morning. We're going to be talking, for my viewers and listeners, I'm going to be talking with Wendy. We're going to be in a dialogue together. So less of an interview per se. I do have questions, but she might have questions back for me as well, because we're in a dialogue together about living the unbound life. And wherever else that might lead us in our time together today, but the unbound life. So Wendy, before we jump into all of what that means, anything else you'd like to share a little bit about your background?
I'm also the parent of 3 kids. And all of this is fit in together, my parenting journey, my work journey, my self-discovery journey. And the more I go down the path, the more I feel like, okay, like I'm showing up as my authentic self in all of the places. I'm not compartmentalizing anymore. And I feel like that's just been really rich. And and hard and fun at the same time. Right.
Yeah, you said something just that struck me right away. This is how conversations flow, right? No longer compartmentalizing. I think that's so interesting because for some people, they think that the way to be successful is you have to compartmentalize your life. When
Mm-hmm.
you go to work, you turn off the fact that you are a mom or a
Mm-hmm.
dad,
Mm-hmm.
or a daughter or son or whatever.
Right.
You turn those off. You turn off any issues that you might be dealing with in your personal life, and um, the myth is you come whole into work so you can be
Mm-hmm.
your whole self at work. And I always thought that was a little interesting, how you can be your whole self at work, but you are kind of, packing and putting
Mm-hmm.
away these very important parts of yourself while you're at work. So let's, before we even get into Unbound Life, what it is, what is
Mm-hmm.
somatics based learning and all of that, let's talk a little bit about this compartmentalization and use, because the way I heard you is that that's not what we want. That is not a way in which we're living our full selves.
I think it's an awareness of when we are putting ourselves into boxes, right? And there's another, I'm going to throw one more word out, is code switching, right?
Oh,
Which is like, what is the identity that I own right now? And how am I using this identity versus another identity in a given space, right? And we all have the ability to do that. Like as a kid, you know that when your parents have friends over, you're on your best behavior. When you're in a conference room, you have a certain veneer behavior that shows up, and that's all really still important as part of being a professional, right? But in the broader sense, like how do we bring an awareness to the way that we show up in different identities, and then how do we give ourselves permission to widen that definition, widen the box that we might feel that we're in over time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
practice,
I
yeah.
love that you just kind of clarified that. And yes, there, there's professional presence, there's
Mhm.
professional kind of conduct or behavior that is expected in our workplaces, but being aware
Mhm.
that we are not maybe shaving off a part of ourselves.
Right.
I also think that what came up for me too is that in this last year or so of your aha life,
Mhm.
this podcast and the blog that I write, um, for a long time I would not publish over into like LinkedIn,
Mhm.
because I was writing about topics that were more spiritual based, not necessarily religious, but spirituality. I know you get it because this is how we connect.
Woo woo is the way that a lot of people
Yeah, a
put
lot of
that.
people
They
want to
don't
think
feel
as
comfortable.
woo woo, but it's wow wow to
Yeah.
me. But yeah, I wouldn't for a while because I thought, oh, that's not really. And then like you said, I started to open up and expand and
Mhm.
let people see that I am faceted. We
Mhm.
all are. And when people can see more of who you really are,
Mhm.
that's when your authentic self really it comes through. That's
Yeah.
what I think. And so I have, I've released, I can't say I'm fully released because there's
Mhm.
still some articles that I will write or podcasts I will record where I'm like, well, should I publish that on
Mhm.
LinkedIn or not? Of course I'll publish it on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, but LinkedIn gives me a little bit of a pause. But I'm becoming braver and braver. And I think that
Mhm.
is so important in this conversation too, about being brave to be who you really are and show the
Mhm.
world who you really are.
Well, what you're doing is choice making, right? Like you're
Oh,
you're discerning what your comfort level is, and I think the more that you do that, the more you're going to be leaning into, well, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing my belief system. I'm choosing my values. I'm choosing myself, which is
hmm
another way to put it. Um, And finding the bridges, like we recently wrote an article about, well, so my leadership team in Intune is reading the book Joy of Business.
Oh,
Um, and
I'll have to write that down and
it's a
we'll have
great
to put it in
book,
the show notes. It's called what?
The Joy of Business.
The Joy of Business. Okay, great.
And we led a 90-minute leadership team meeting. So you think about, the value people bring and the time value, and yet the transformation that happened over that 90 minutes is so priceless, right?
Wow.
The organization. And we talked about, when did you experience joy in your life, and what were the stories of joy, and what were the commonalities, and what does joy feel like inside your body, so that you can call that feeling up anytime, because your body has a felt sense of it and a body memory of it, right?
Yeah.
Then we applied it to, how might we show up with joy for our clients? How can we feel joy when we're doing the work that we're doing, working on a project for Intune, right? And how then can we help our clients find joy in the work that they do for their clients? So it's a
Oh,
joy chain. It's a
it's a
joy.
joy. It's a joy chain. So, I say that the aha life is a life of more joy because it comes from the proverb, shared joy is more joy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, more joy, more purpose, more fulfillment. Joy is a word, sometimes in language, there are words that resonate with us deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And for as far back as I can remember, I mean, really, maybe college, which was many moons ago for me, um, this word, I think it was even younger, childhood, because one of my favorite aunts is named Joy.
Mm.
And so this word joy is something that has been in my life and in my spirit for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think of every time I hear the word, it's an energy with that word
Mm-hmm.
that comes, that you said it's a felt sense, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
is a felt sense for me, like just even the word joy
Right.
just conjures up for me, that no matter what is going on,
Mm-hmm.
happiness might be hard to find at times,
Mm-hmm.
but joy is always there. Joy
Joy is always there.
is always available, even through, kind of tough times.
Yeah. And as human beings, we have all of these life experiences, right? That move us, that touch us, that upset us, right? The whole
Yes.
spectrum. And within it, because your body has experienced it, because you've gone through that, if you can get back in touch with the things that you want more of in your life, um, in a minute, you can access that and be in that space and change your mindset. You can work, you can approach a conversation from that space.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So
So,
we could talk about joy. We could have a whole show about joy. It's such a powerful
yeah.
emotion and felt sense and all of that. So again, before we go into the unbound life, you talk about somatics. Let's just do a little bit of terminology for
Mm-hmm.
those who will listen and watch the
Yeah.
podcast. When you say somatic based,
Mm-hmm.
learning or felt
Mm-hmm.
sense,
Right.
how do you define that? What does that mean?
Yeah. It's your mind, body, and spirit working together to reflect back, like to shape who you are, right? So
Mm,
you're a human being in this body, but you have a spiritual or energetic self, however you want to access that part of you. And you definitely have a thinking brain, which we all are very well aware of. It
yes.
carries both the good and the bad, in
Yes.
terms of motivating us and so forth. So soma is the whole of that. It's not just
Mm,
your body, which is commonly what it sounds like it might be,
yeah.
but it's all of you, giving you information and feedback, on what's happening with your relationship with the outside world.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
understand now your business name a little bit,
Yeah.
Intune. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being in tune with your whole self,
Right.
mind, body, spirit, or energy, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so thank you for that. So now let's move
Okay.
into the unbound life.
Mm-hmm.
Just the topic itself, when we first started talking, I was like, yes, yes, that's it, let's talk about that. um what is the
Yeah.
unbound life?
Um, an unbound life to me is a life where you're feeling as much a sense of freedom and joy, right? And self. And so we can like
Mm,
talk about self a little bit more, but it's like you're feeling a connection to yourself and that connection is grounded in passion and joy and freedom more than it is anything else, right?
mm,
So more than it is, I should be doing this. I need this in my life, or striving energy where you're like climbing the ladder or you're
yes.
reaching for something and you're working so hard at it. There's there's ease to it too. Part of it is choosing to let go of things, like intentionally. What do I need to let go in order to create more space? It feels spacious. So I
Okay.
love
Yes.
the opening when you said that, after our conversations, you feel
Yeah.
expansive. That's part of my mission. It's like I don't intentionally, I mean, it's my mission in the sense that I would love a world where people felt expansive nature, that was accessible, that was replicable, that they can, have it anytime they want. It's on demand. What are the practices and that would get us there? So unbound life means that you are in your body feeling this openness and width. We talk about width too in
Yes.
somatics. We then are quiet in our mind. Like your mind has chatter and it has a lot of critical narratives and voices that is I call the super ego,
Yes.
and I get that from another practice that I do, which is called Diamond Heart. It's called the Diamond Approach.
I mean, you have so much, Wendy. We can just be like, we can be talking
Yeah,
for days, peeling the
I can
onion back.
add links in the show notes for you, but
Okay.
it's quieting, like in the coaching world and in a self-development world, there's a lot of work around getting quiet, meditation, mindfulness, right? And that's so that we can get quiet enough to hear ourselves. But often when we start doing that, we start hearing the chatter, like you shouldn't do this, I'm not good enough,
Mm,
imposter syndrome. And then a lot of the coaching comes in to fix that, right? Whereas in reality, that super ego is just there to protect us. Like whatever those voices are, they showed up at some point in your life from age 0 to the age that you are now. And it was there to protect you for some reason, because fundamentally, as all human beings, we want three things. We want to belong, we want dignity, and we want a sense of safety. And when we don't have those, we kind of maneuver, and shape ourselves to whatever is out there. And that's part of like our survival instincts. But to feel unbound is you rise up over those conditioned tendencies and those voices so that
yeah.
you're in charge, right? You're
Yeah.
aware and we call it resourcing, that you're resourced. You have the capability and the capacity to be in charge.
Yeah. To be
Right.
in charge of how you show up, be in charge of your life, be in charge of your thoughts,
To take
um,
responsibility and
take
ownership.
responsibility. Yes.
Yeah. It
Living your
doesn't
life by
mean
design rather than
right,
by default, right?
right, right. You're still going to get triggered by things, and right? But
Of
it's like
course.
I'm going to show up this way because I now have better awareness and understanding and practice to show up in a way that I'm proud of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So I
unbound
spend a
life.
lot less time second guessing myself, right? In this journey, a lot less time needing other people to validate me,
Mm.
right?
So it
Um,
sounds like a huge journey. I mean, well worth it, because
mhm.
if you get to any place where um, you are not striving so much. You're not,
Mhm.
you're just hearing a lot of chatter, a lot of it not great things in your
Right.
mind.
Right.
and just not being clear about who you are and what you want and all of that. To
Mhm.
be able to rise above all of that sounds like such a great life. um
And it didn't
so
start that way, you know. Like,
okay.
I mean, you know, my I think the very beginning of my journey was a desire to feel free and not knowing, and it's because of my upbringing. I was raised, you know, I was born in Taiwan, grew up in the Midwest, was raised by, you know, an immigrant mother, you know, Chinese, Taiwanese, who really was not fully embracing living here, right? She came here because my father's um, fellowship moved here at the time. And so she came out of obligation. Her family and her future was here, but it was hard. And I grew up with a lot of like fit in, like assimilate and fit in,
Hmm.
right? To give myself sort of a leg up in American society. But it meant like trimming off all aspects of myself that didn't fit in the concept as defined by my mom, really,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And yet I could feel these like, but I want to do art, but I want to spend time with my friends. They're different things. So I was always spread very thin, being the good girl, daughter, obeying, and then trying to figure out like where can I be myself, you
Yeah.
know? And I literally would hide. I had like a plantation shutter closet, and you know
Yes.
the top shelf where you put like the sweaters and things that you don't usually. I would clear that off and get up there with a flashlight and a book and a pillow,
Oh.
and I would spend my days there, right, reading. And eventually, as I grew older, you know, probably when I got to college, I felt free for the first time. And then when I had my first son, I started realizing I was still trapped. I had a lot of rage for not being able to express myself or to have a sense of self determination, like who am I and what
Hmm.
do I care about?
Hmm.
Having a voice.
Hmm.
So I started to rebel against all that, and rebelling didn't feel right either. It took me down paths of just being angry and resentful and bitter, and I didn't want to be trapped in that body for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of the journey, you
Yeah.
know?
That
Yeah.
was the beginning of the journey. So, was there a clear moment for you? I don't know. I call them aha moments, but
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
they are, these epiphanies, these, you know,
Along the way.
along the way. And there are a
Hmm.
lot of them. I think of, aha moments, not just as this one cataclysmic moment that it
Hmm.
all, but they are little messages along the way,
Hmm.
and almost like lanterns, along a dark path, or breadcrumbs that are leading you. That every little message that comes to you,
Yep.
it's leading you home to
Oh.
yourself, you
Mm.
know.
Hmm.
So share a little bit about maybe what occurred that you said,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to
Hmm.
be who I am, and this is who I am.
When my son was one, my authentic self is very warm sitting in my office. So I'm just gonna
Yeah, that's
give
fine.
myself a
Hey,
little
I'm
relief.
sipping my coffee. Yeah, we're just having a
We're
conversation,
just being our full selves. Yeah.
staying away in California.
um, I actually started seeing a therapist for the first time in my life in my late 20s as a new mom. Not so much for postpartum depression or anything, but I knew that I had this child that I cared about so much in my life, and I didn't want him to grow up the same way. And I had this fear
Mm,
of hearing voices in my head that I would just replicate, you know. And I love my mom, and I respect her, and I appreciate her. But that was also a journey. So I started seeing a therapist who then gave me tools of, um, you are not, you are, you are not who other people expect you to be and want you to be. And I can't remember the exact, lessons and teachings that she gave me, but it was the first time I had access to like I statements, like
yeah.
speaking from your I rather than blaming someone else for something and holding it there. Um, I would say that In my work life, I've been privileged to work, for an independent school, in schools for a while, in ways that um, there was a lot of best practices in the workplace. Like the organization thrived based on a lot of success factors, and yet I felt like I was not quite in the right place after a certain time. After being there for over a decade, I felt like, what else am I learning and what else am I contributing? I started to feel a little smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I did Seth Godin's Alt MBA program. And he has a great book called It's Your Turn, right?
Yeah.
His mantra is choose yourself. And I started choosing myself fully after that program because
Okay.
I knew that I was worthy. I knew that I had enough, that I was enough, that I had value to contribute. It was me giving my voice. Um, and then when I decided to, well, then I was hired to run an educational think tank. And in that, I was chosen specifically for that role. And so again, it was like an external validation of choosing paired with this internal, I'm going to choose myself. And so
Yeah.
embracing that practice is a big step, I think.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
unpacking all those worthiness, you know,
Yeah.
feelings.
Let's go down this side road of external validation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
versus learning to know within yourself that you're
Mm-hmm.
enough without needing to hear that from anyone else. I'm sure you perhaps encounter this with some of your clients,
Mm-hmm.
certainly in work that I do and people that I speak with. I hear that, that people still crave a lot of external validation.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that would be something that is the antithesis of the unbound life. So
Mm-hmm.
let's go down that side road of how do you help someone who,
Mm-hmm.
again, for them to feel value, they need
Mm-hmm.
to hear it from people who are close to them, whether it's family members or parents,
Mm-hmm.
particularly,
Mm-hmm.
but even coworkers and managers in the workplace.
Right.
How do
Right.
you work with people who have that, that craving for that?
So there's a few things I think I'd like to touch on in response to that. The first is that, um, so I think you're probably familiar with attachment theory, right? When a
Yes.
human being is born, we need a safe place, right? And you see it with like dogs. If any of us have dogs, you give your dog a treat, they run off, they turn around and look at you. Are you still there, right? And
Yes.
toddlers, when they're in the playground, will have a home base where their caregiver is. Go wander, check. But if you, as the caregiver, have gotten up and moved, the toddler is going to have to come back to home base, touch base to go back out, right? So there's this tethering and anchoring process that as human beings we need to feel really grounded and safe, right? And in order to go do the bigger things that we want for ourselves in the world.
Mm.
And when we have things that happen as a child, into adulthood that don't allow that grounded attachment to happen, we're always looking for it. Like we're
Mm.
always looking for it in some form or fashion, in the form of love, in the form of validation. Like we want it to feel that, like that confident, calm, grounded, embodied self that says, yep, you got this, you can do this, right?
Yeah.
So it's understanding that part of it. And then I'm choosing to take it back, to choose to say, I have the capacity to validate myself.
Mm. Just that
Right?
affirmation is so powerful.
Right.
I have the capacity to validate myself.
It's
Yeah,
joyful to validate myself.
it's joyful. You have to write those down for me. I need to probably say those
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up a little bit of transparency around me because I've done a lot of work within myself,
Mm-hmm.
also in this space. Not so much needing. I guess it's a version of
Mm-hmm.
the external validation that I grew up with because I was a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And while I still, of course, like to bring joy to others and all of that, that is a part of who I am. Um, but wanting to do that and feeling the
Mhm.
need to do that are two different things.
Right.
And yeah, so I grew up a little bit of a people pleaser. Will so and so like me if I do this?
Hmm.
How do I, how do I please them to, especially in relationships early in life, even through college,
Hmm.
even with my boyfriends or whatever, it was
Hmm.
about how do I make them happy,
Hmm.
and almost subjugating my own happiness
Right.
to
Right.
please them.
Right.
So I think that this external validation, this people pleasing, all come from the same place, right? Of
Hmm.
needing to feel grounded, needing.
Hmm.
So I think that affirmation of I have the capacity to validate
Hmm.
myself. It is
Right.
joyful to validate myself.
And
Yeah.
when you do that, so when you're speaking, I see your smile, right? Your
Yes.
eyes are involved, like your whole face is like, and I feel like your shoulders are relaxed, and I can feel your own delight in it, right?
Yes.
And so it's like you taking like a screenshot of that sense of your body and knowing that that's in you. And when you're feeling like, oh, I'm giving, and another way I talk about it to myself is I'm giving my power away
Mm.
right now in this moment by seeking validation. Do I really need it? I mean, when I'm writing or when I'm producing something or I'm designing something in the business, I have people look at it. That's smart practice, but that's
Yes.
different than validation. So I just want to
Yes.
clear that up for
Those
people.
are different. Yeah, you're wise to, because your writing or your project or whatever is going to um it's going to hit the masses. It's going to hit people
Hmm.
other than yourself. And
Hmm.
so you want, diversity of thought
Hmm.
is a great thing, to get other people's points of view. Um, Quite different from needing to hear from others that you're good or you're smart or you're this or that, as a way in which you validate who your own power. And I love that you say when we seek that so much from other people, it's like we are just, I have this visual in my head. I'm putting on a platter my power and saying, here,
Take
you
a
take
piece.
my power.
Take the whole thing. Take a
Take the
piece. Yeah.
whole thing. I don't know what to do with it, so you take it.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's. I mean, we're adding a little levity just to that, but there are people who live with that and
Right.
can't get from under the thumb of. And sometimes it's our loved ones. It's our parents that we want to
Hmm.
please so much that we do things seeking their validation. Will this
Hmm.
make my mom proud? Um,
Right.
who's for me is deceased, but will this make my mom proud? Would this make my dad proud? And what would
Hmm.
they think of me? And all of that. And it's one thing to want to please your parents because they've worked so hard
Hmm.
and to get you in a place. But again, when your value
Hmm.
and of who you are is tied to them saying yes or no, that's good
Hmm.
or bad, Wendy, that's good
Right.
or bad, Tonya, um, then that probably is a little bit too far from where we want to go.
Right. And
All right.
and I would say that anytime someone says that, I can feel like my back, like between my shoulders, I can feel it kind of like shrinking in a little bit. Like it feels like
Oh,
there's a little bit of that kind of energy. And so I would say, what does being unbound in terms of the validation piece feel like? Um, so there's your length, right? Like you've got your vertical length when you're standing or even seated, and when you elevate into it, um, you're activating your dignity, right?
mm.
So what does that feel like? And you can tap in and say, like, from my place of dignity, what is my relationship to this validation, right? If I
Yeah.
still need it from this place of dignity, you know, and then you also have your width. So this is about activating your felt sense of dignity and sort of like your energetic sense of, can I feel where my body ends, and can I feel, so send some energy within myself out past my body?
Mm-hmm.
Can I send it out into the room? And our width is our connection to the world, right? So
Yeah.
for the validation piece,
You shared a story with me. It's coming to mind for me, and I know we're probably not doing great on time, but we're having a really great conversation. I hope you think so too.
yeah, I do.
Um, you shared with me that there was an experience where there was a woman or a man, it doesn't matter,
Uh-huh.
who kind of in this kind of trust kind of experience
Oh, yeah.
had people around her, whatever.
Yeah.
Can you share that story a little bit? I without divulging too much of the person, just
Yeah.
just the experience.
The experience of it. So the
Yeah.
experience of it, it was actually, I mean, it's actually an allyship workshop, an
Mm.
allyship exercise. So the question was, what does allyship feel like, and what does being supported feel like? So if we turn it around in the experience of the person, it was, what does feeling supported by another human being feel like to me? You know, and
Yeah.
so the practice partners were standing in front saying, we've got it, nobody can get through, you know, we're here in front of you. Stood behind her and said, we have your back. We've got your back. No, you're fine, we're right here. And then we're right here beside you. And for her, it felt much better to be right beside,
Okay.
with the two people slightly behind, but
Yes.
their shoulders just touching her shoulders in a very light way. So
Mm.
when she closed her eyes and she checked it in with herself, she could feel them in a way. And it was like the Rubik's Cube, you know, you're doing it,
Yes.
and the moment it clicks in and you're done,
And you're like,
like, you could feel it in the room. It clicked in, and she just released all the holding that she'd been holding around not feeling supported in her life.
yeah. Yeah.
Really
This
powerful.
this is this is a timely, I'm glad we kind of diverged over into that space, because this is so timely with you talking about allyship
Mm-hmm.
during, all of the social, racial unrest that we have going on in our country right now, and the need for allyship.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just, every person, what they need from their allies might feel differently. Like you
Right.
said, it, it wasn't that she needed an ally to stand in front of her, or even, fully behind her. She
Mm-hmm.
needed them walking beside her, but that
Mm-hmm.
she was a little out front. And that shows a lot of, um, you know, I don't know, independence, still wants to be independent and self-determinant, but knowing that you need support
Mm-hmm.
during time.
I think about this with teams in the workplace, you know, how powerful that would be to break down into triads and practice
Yeah.
it. Everyone gets a turn, and you come back knowing what that feels like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Wendy, uh, we've just scratched the surface on the Unbound Life. So let's go there.
Okay.
Um, so how does if there's still more explanation of it that you want to
Uh,
give, that's fine too. But what are some of the practical ways
mm-hmm.
that an unbound person shows up in life, whether it is roles at work as a
Mm-hmm.
leader, as a parent? You've talked
Mm-hmm.
about your son when your son was your first son was born.
Mm-hmm.
In relationships, I've talked about how I gave my power away in
Yeah.
relationships early in my life. How does the unbound life show up uh, in those important kind of places in our lives?
Um, as a parent, I am working on it. It's hard. It's hard. My kids are 25, 22, and 17. And I would say, when they were younger, I had a really strong philosophy of how I wanted to parent, which was, to listen to them, to have them feel me there with them, to have empathy. I think I really worked hard on being present. My oldest son, when he was 10, would come right, stand next to me at the computer, like, Mom, I need your attention right now. And I had to teach him to wait a few minutes, but I also had to learn myself to drop everything, turn my body, face him, give eye contact, and be present. And that changed the tone of our relationship, with all of my kids, as I could do that. It means, being human with them and being vulnerable and authentic and transparent. And that's the part that I'm working on, because as I go through hard things in my own life, I've grappled with, like, how much do I share? What's developmentally appropriate? And because I have that tension within myself, I feel like I'm not quite fully unbound as a parent. And then in the workplace, my partner and I founded Intune Collective, but we are not actively using the founder title. Like, I've introduced myself here, and because the company's so new, but going forward, we want to be in service to what the company needs, right? And to be fluid as leaders, and to create fluidity within the company, and to allow, like, true active human potential to show up. So it's carrying that as a vision forward.
Okay.
And using that as a way to make decisions about the company. Like, how do we do affiliate, agreements? How do we work in partnership and collaboration with organizations? How do we structure deals? All of that.
Yeah. And so just to hone in there a little bit. So what is it about the founder title that feels, I'm getting the sense that it doesn't fully reflect how you want to show up as a leader in your business?
I think for both of us, there's ego in it, right? There's a little ego of, like, we've worked so hard and we really wanted to do this thing, and but it comes back to us. It keeps coming back to us, and we want to be in service, to our team, to our clients, and so it's removing whatever stands in the way of that wider, more expansive possibility. And so the question we often ask is, in this moment, in this next meeting, in this next decision, what is going to bring us closer to the broadest, possibility? What's going to unlock the most potential in our choice making?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And doing not letting titles, set the tone or lead the way or create a dynamic in the relationship that is, a kind of a power system a little bit. And I equate that to the corporate space of leaders. Many organizations are still quite hierarchical. And, you have these titles of vice president, senior vice president, president, all of these. And if I'm taking that principle and putting it inside of workplaces, even the place where I work, is that those titles, putting those titles to the side and just working with people.
Right.
Just working with people. Yeah.
And noticing that people have more, again, that's the invitation to the whole human, right? Because if you're working with someone, you're learning more about them, their passions, ways that they can contribute to the greater good, of the company, greater good of the vision, that you might not even have any awareness about, right? And being an inviter
I
in
love it.
space, right?
Yeah.
So a lot falls on leaders. There's a lot of opportunity here for leaders to become unbound leaders. So, yeah.
So, I want to stay on leaders a little bit, because I'm feeling that people will need this, and I don't want them to walk away saying, "Oh, that sounds good." So, practically speaking, an unbound leader, how do they show up with their team? How do they show up at work with their peers, even? Yeah.
There's two parts. The first is the awareness, right? Like, how are they in touch with themselves? So whether that's through a practice of, mindfulness, or going through programs like Search Inside Yourself. There's ways where you can tap in. So understanding who you are, what your challenges are, and also understanding your conditioned tendencies. Like when you have conflict, do you tend to fight or flight, fly or freeze or appease, like we were saying earlier, right? As a leader, you're still seeking validation too. So what are your triggers as a person, and how does that show up in your leadership style?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then creating sort of an action plan around those so that you can respond through them in a way that creates openings for other people. So your job as a leader is really to create openings for your teams, your team leaders, so that the organization keeps like laddering up and releasing more and more of that potential. And that means maybe changing your decision-making style, reorienting what authority means to you, and talking more about roles and responsibilities. And authority still matters. So like being really clear about when these things matter, giving other people voice as much as possible, believing in them, like really truly believing in them. What do you need to believe in the people that you're working with?
Yeah, that's really good. Very practical, very concrete ways in which, if you're viewing this or listening to it, and you're a leader, I hope those are, really practical ways, things for you to think about. Are you the ultimate decision maker on everything, and do you have to be? And how do you invite input from team members and colleagues, even if you do have to be the one who makes the final decision? And so, yeah, thank you so much for those real practical tips. I would imagine that those flow right into every other relationship as well. We talked even a little bit about your relationships with your parents, as they're getting older now, and the dynamic in that relationship changes somewhat, but they're still your parents.
Right.
And so, how
it's not mutually exclusive. Like you can love and fit full on love and still have healthy boundaries if that's what you need, right? So I think we tend to think like it's one or the other, right? Or that we live on one end and not the other. So it's like really just giving allowance for the love to come through.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really, but it is, you can feel the love and you can choose to act from love. And yet you can also have what you need to feel like you're living life on your own terms, and not from an angry, like defended way, but in a grounded, embodied way. So recently I had to make some very big decisions in my life as far as a relationship, partnership, also in my work. And so I went back into my head. Like it'd been such a long time that I was in my head trying to analyze it all out, and I felt a little discombobulated. And so I didn't know what to do. I went and I laid on the sidewalk.
Yeah, and you told me about this. This is, whoa, that was a little different. So
it's a little different.
Yeah, share more about that.
So there was an awareness in me that my back kind of ached. It could be from sitting too long, but it was a consistent ache that was like lower back, up my middle back. It felt like I really needed a massage, but I also felt like I was having a hard time taking deep breaths. So it was like stress and anxiety starting to come in around the decision making. And it was warm outside, and I just felt like I need to get out of the house. I need to change the scenery. And the flat surface just called to me. And so the moment I lay down, it was like the cells in the back of my body could relax because I felt the firm ground supporting me. I felt supported. Even though I wasn't fully yet supporting myself, I felt so supported. And the warmth kind of like allowed my body to kind of melt away the stress and anxiety that I was holding on to. And then I stayed there for about 15 minutes, just letting the sensations flow through my body until my mind got really quiet. And I did it maybe for like a week every day, not because I needed to have it as a practice, but I was called to doing it. I wanted more of that that yummy feeling.
Yes.
And out of it came a lot of clarity about the decisions. So it was like creating allowance for it to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, and doing what you need to do to get that, you know?
Mhm.
And I think when we free ourselves from, oh, this may seem strange to people. I mean, who cares if it's giving you what you need in that moment
Mhm.
to feel supported and to clear your head so you can make, really important decisions for about what you do next in your life
Right.
and what you want in your life.
Yeah.
Man, that is so worth it.
Right.
I just, I'm a universe person. I'm a nature person. I believe that when I need clarity,
Mhm.
I go and spend time in nature.
Mhm.
Even just observing nature is such a teacher for me.
Mhm.
I mean, we both came up through our educational, uh, careers
Background.
and
Yeah.
so forth. But nature teaches, and
Definitely.
nature supports, and it reminds us,
Mhm.
and brings such clarity. So that's where it doesn't surprise me that the sidewalk and feeling the firm support
Mhm.
of earth,
Mhm.
you know, feeling the warmth of sun, um, on your face, and just, yeah, that can bring a great deal of support and clarity for you. So good
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah.
I
And
Go
and
ahead.
applying it to my parents, it's like that support, and back to what you're saying about nature is that and the allowance is like allowing them to be who they are,
Yeah.
and knowing that I can't control them or anyone else in my life, really. And we hear that, all the time, right?
Right.
But really put it into practice, meaning um, I might look at the clouds and watch them move for about 5 seconds, and in that I feel the movement of allowance, and then I can feel my heart move into allowance, so that I'm literally creating space for the other person to have a voice and to be in this relationship or moment with me that feels much more open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So a lot of what you've been talking about, Wendy, is, I can now get a clear understanding of how important the somatics,
Hmm.
you know,
Show up.
to this
Yeah.
practice. You've got to be so in tune to yourself.
Hmm.
And what do you need in that moment? And how do you open yourself so that it's not even just about what you need, but it's also, you know, you are in a lot of ways serving others because
Hmm.
now you're more open,
Hmm.
and expansive. That's kind of what I get from that. So I have just a few more questions we will dig into. I'm cognizant of our time. We talked before about 5 stages of unbinding.
Hmm.
Can we go there?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Um, the word unbound came to me because I've had something with my voice. Like sometimes I get a little cough sound as an Asian woman representing like what my voice is in the world. And so I have a friend who's a body worker, and she felt like there's something here, like some energy
Mhm.
holding. And in it, she said, just go back in your lineage. There's something here. And it ended up being that it was my great grandmother had bound feet, right? And I realized that she and I were alive at the same time. I
Okay.
just I just kept getting this visual of her, right? And so I like unbound her feet in
Mhm.
this moment, and then she in turn like unbound whatever was around my voice in terms of showing up and speaking up. And so that's how Unbound came to be as a program. And the 5 steps are very Chinese in that I've kind of named them after elements. It's like air. How do you create space around the work that you want to do, both, in your body, in your schedule, in your life?
Mm.
What does that look like? Ground, which is how are you supported in this work that you want to do? What are the systems, the people, the where do you get your inspiration from? Like, what are the things that are going to ground and inspire you? And then water is clearing. So what do you need to clear through your mind, like the narrative voices, and clear through your body so that you are moving less into constraining mode and more into expansion mode? And what are the practices that help you do that? So that then by that point, you're more unbound and have a sensation of it. And at that point, you also have a declaration and a commitment. So in the
Nice.
practice that I've learned is we're not saying like I'm committed to doing this, like I commit to doing this. You say I am a commitment to, because you're taking your commitment and you're wearing it. You know, you're bringing it
Yes.
inside your body and you're embodying that commitment in what you do. So then the fourth one is fire. So what are you activating with that commitment? What do you stand for? What are you building? What are you working for? What's the change you want to see in the world, and how do you orient yourself towards that?
Mm.
And then last one is sky, which is more spirit and connection to others, right? It's not just about you. I want people to look up and look around and be connected to something greater than who they are in the moment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love all of that. And I love that you use the elements to,
yeah.
kind of just get a good feel for all of that. I
Hmm.
love that. We'll have to, dig even deeper. I'd love to have a future conversation with you about those. And
Hmm.
who knows, you might have a new client in me. It's so good. Um, all right. So anything else as we get ready to wrap up? And I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
Anything else that you know can share with those who will listen and watch this podcast? Like if they finish, they've listened to it, it all
Hmm.
sounds great,
Hmm.
feels like it would serve a need that they have for
Hmm.
themselves, what would you kind of coach them or advise them to go do with this after they
Hmm.
listened and watched this?
Um, I'd like to share a quick compassion, I think a lot of this, we're really hard on ourselves to get it all right, and we carry a lot of responsibilities, right? So I just have a really quick practice that I just want to
Yeah, please.
share.
Yeah.
Um, and it's called a compassion blend, meaning that it's how do we bring compassion in through um, two different somatic experiences. So one is your fist, which
Okay.
represents rigidity, right? Something like you're encountering conflict somewhere, or something that's so entrenched in you that has been there forever that you like, ah, it's not going
Mm.
away. Um,
Let me just pause. So do you have to kind of name it, or is this just representative of
you
anything?
can represent it as anything in practice, but if you name it, it's really powerful. So for example, I have worked with some people who might have a limiting belief story, like I I lost my job, and or for me, I like, okay, so like if you are in a job transition and I can't find a job right now, it's coronavirus and times
Yeah,
are hard. I'm
yeah.
scared, right? Your fear
That's a
is,
lot of people out there, right?
right?
So
Let's make it real, right?
so just for our people who will listen and maybe not view, what we do is we have our fist up.
Mm-hmm.
Fist represents something that is, just a condition that you're dealing with at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
or
Right.
have dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
That has a limiting belief or something to that,
Right.
right? A limiting
Right.
story. Okay.
And you want it to change so badly, right? That we as human beings tend to come. And now picture like a child hanging on to the swings, not wanting to leave the playground, and the parents like, it's time to go, and you're peeling the fingers open.
Peeling the
You're trying,
fingers
and
off.
you're trying to do it with your other hand. Like you're really trying to like open up the fist, but you're forcing it to
Oh,
happen, right? And you feel kind of the conflict and tension between your two hands.
yes.
And you feel, and there's
Yeah,
a sense of like,
one is closed so tightly, the other one is trying to pry it open.
right.
Yeah.
And the more that you do it with your open hand, your closed hand probably is resenting it.
Mm.
There's resistance, right? So if you go back to closed fist and you bring in your other hand, your open hand with compassion this time,
Mm.
and just like even close your eyes and just touch it with compassion. Just touch your hand.
Oh my God. That's such a
'Cause-
different feeling.
And move
Those of you
compassion.
who are watching and you're in your heads all the time, I just encourage you to do the exercise. I didn't know what that feeling, I didn't know that I would feel what I just felt.
Right.
That, the first time I got it, I got that feeling of trying to pry something open, right? Trying to,
Mhm.
you know, you're
Work it. Work
judging,
it.
you're judging it because, hey, you're why are you hanging on to that limiting belief? Let me get
Mhm.
over it, get
Mhm.
over that, da, 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 da. Whatever that counter narrative is,
Mhm.
was kind of harsh.
Mhm.
But the second time, with just an open palm,
Mhm.
just laying it on the fist, says, I'm here, right? That's
I
what it
got
felt
you.
to me. I'm here
Yeah.
for you.
Mhm. So an example is I was in a bad car accident a few years ago and I had shoulder pain that wouldn't go away, but it wasn't structural, it wasn't physical. There's nothing else. And so, you know, and I I realized that I was still feeling guilty for driving the car.
Mm.
I hadn't forgiven myself. I'd gone through all of it. And so with this, my compassion hand came in and said, you were driving the car that night. You did the best that you could. It's okay to forgive yourself. It's okay to feel forgiveness. And then that compassion hand says, thank you for protecting me all this time. Guilt, you know, you've reminded me of what a traumatic experience that was, right? But I don't need you to protect me anymore. And so I'm going to release you from playing that role in my life. And I'm going to actually let you go. But I do that by thanking you for helping me so much, right?
Yes.
And actually, that's where I was carrying stress still,
Yeah.
and it's gone away.
Yeah.
So that's the power of the work that I
That's the
believe in.
power. That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you said you had two exercises or just that exercise?
Well, I just that one exercise, but I just want to say, compassion in trying new things, compassion in growing as a human being, give yourself compassion because that's just going to keep you in the game, and we need you to be in the game, all of us. And then having a centering practice. So, you know, um, I can share in the show notes some videos that have to do with like how do you find your dignity and your width. And then we have the third dimension, which is your depth.
Yes.
Um, and so, how do you center? And then, how do you trust yourself?
Yeah.
It's about working your way into like that trust. And so, there's layers of work. But
Yeah.
when you get to a place in your life and you really trust yourself, like a lot can happen. And that's where happiness is. That it brings you to the edge of happiness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So good. Yes, you send me whatever, and I will make sure to place them in the show notes. Anything that will help our viewers and listeners and to live their unbound life.
Yeah.
And it's a life of feeling free and letting go of all the striving and worry and indecision. So creating more clarity in your life, create just about what seems simple but so important, and a lot of people don't have it, like just being able to answer questions like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you want to be? How
Mm-hmm.
do you want to show up in the world, and what are
Mm-hmm.
your gifts to bear,
Mm-hmm.
that you want to bring to
Yeah.
fullness in the world? I think it's so important. So
And what
Wendy,
matters to you?
what
Mm-hmm.
matters to you? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Wendy, we are sisters in a lot of ways. We're on, I think, we're co-laboring and I hesitate to use the word laboring because it sounds like, manual labor and all,
Uh-huh.
but we are reaching,
Co-creating. Mm-hmm.
co-creating, we're reaching people. I know I'm at time, but I want to say this, that I have, I'm a certified coach as well. You have a coaching practice, and a lot of times to market yourself and to really grow clients, which I
Mm-hmm.
have a full-time job still, so I'm not in that space right now. But I
Mm-hmm.
have friends who have left their full-time jobs and are have their own independent coaching practices. And not all of them, but some of them say you have to find where the client's pain is. In fact, I'm going to write about it over this weekend for my next blog post. You have to find where the client's pain is,
Mm-hmm.
and then show them how you can help them, move from pain to
Mm-hmm.
wholeness or wellness um, in their lives. And one way that I've heard it is you have to help your clients go from hell to heaven, is
Mm-hmm.
that way. And I think there's some truth to that, but I don't ever want to be, in my own practice,
Mm-hmm.
be opportunistic in that way. I don't want it to be, because the kind of coaching practice that I see myself evolving
Mm-hmm.
into is very similar to Intune, the Intune
Mm-hmm.
Collective. It's People may not be totally broken. They may
Right.
not be in hell per se, but they're not living their full and whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, the article that's bubbling up inside of me is, what is the cost of your unfulfillment?
Yes.
Like, what
Yes.
is that cost that you're bearing, that you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to bear?
Right.
Whatever that is, there's so much more to fulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can kind of get rid of the costs that you're paying, not to live a whole and fulfilled life. I don't know
Yeah.
why that came up for me, but it did, because I think of your practice in the Intune Collective as not just trying to find where your client is in hell, but
Mm-hmm.
just understanding and trying to get them to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, because the whole premise behind that is people won't pay for,
Mm-hmm.
if they're not in deep pain, they won't
Mm-hmm.
pay you for
Right.
coaching. And
Right.
I don't know, I think that, um I believe, as you
Mm-hmm.
said, all people want dignity.
Mm-hmm.
They want a sense of belonging. They want safety.
Mm-hmm.
People know deep within themselves that there is so much power
Mm-hmm.
and potential that is untapped. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
they want to go through life knowing that and not doing anything about it, then that's that. We all make choices, right?
Right. Right.
But I believe more people are seeking more joy, more
Mm-hmm.
purpose, and more fulfillment in their lives. And
Mm-hmm.
not just for them, it's self-transcendent, actually. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he
Mm-hmm.
got to this self-actualization, and then
Mm-hmm.
he had a aha moment that wasn't the epitome of
Mm-hmm.
just making sure that I am my full self, but part of being my full self is being self-transcendent, like
Mm-hmm.
thinking about others and the needs of others and how can I support others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe there is a lot of people out there that need and want Intune Collective. They may not be feeling hell, but they
Mm-hmm.
know they are living below what they can be living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That cost of unfulfillment is too weighty. It's too much
Right.
for them to bear now, and they want to take it to the next level. They want to be their full and whole selves. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, the whole human.
Mm-hmm. And there's a benefit to workplaces, right? To having that happen. in terms of retention and productivity and all the typical metrics that are important, right?
Yes.
But then there's a felt sense because as educators, I know that if we walk into a school, you can feel it. You can feel that learning is happening, that it's a vibrant place where people can thrive. And so you can feel that in companies as well.
I have this, I had just had this aha moment, and then I promise I'll go to our last question. We're both educators. So this whole process of learning, this whole process of the evolving self is the orientation. That's where that's what we're bringing into this practice. And I think when I think about some of my other colleagues that are in this coaching business, they're coming at it perhaps from their business orientation. Okay, how do you cost benefit analysis, and don't get me wrong, that's really important. But I think that might be the difference. That might be why that kind of way of, didn't really align fully with me. I understand it, but I felt like I just have this, this felt sense that people know the potential that resides in them. They just want someone to help them crack that open and all right. So
I love that so much
about that.
Yeah. I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. So, so we'll get everything into the show notes if you're listening to this that Wendy has brought up for us today. Wendy, how can viewers, listeners get in touch with you, or how can they follow you?
Our Intune Collective site is simply that. It's intunecollective.com. I am also on LinkedIn, and then my website is Wendy Horng Brawer. That's Wendy and then HORNG, B as in boy, RAWER.com. All
right, cool. So Wendy, last question that I ask all of my partners, this is Your Aha Life, the podcast. And I always say the podcast because I have a blog and some other things that are also called Your Aha Life. But the Aha Life, Your Aha Life is a life of enlightenment and using cues and experiences from our lives to enlighten us, because I believe they all tell a story. They all tell our story. But that enlightenment helps us to then lead lives of more joy and more purpose and more fulfillment. But what that means for me can be very different for what it means to you. So I'd love for you to share, what does the Aha Life mean to you, and how are you living your Aha Life?
And I think that was going to be my last question for you before. It's like, how is the Aha Life and the Unbound Life overlapping and similar, right?
They are. Yeah. They're so good. That's
yeah. And I would say there's just a moment where I felt like a victim of these are the things that are happening to me, and there's a moment where I said, I'm in charge. And I that's my biggest aha. And I could, say it happened it was a practice of it happening over and over again, enough that I want to wake up every day and say, I'm in charge. Because I believe in myself as a human being, and I want to do good things. And so I'm in charge.
Yeah. I choose my life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And all this did was just scratch the surface of so many more conversations that I'd love to have with you.
Yeah.
On the podcast and off the podcast. So thank you so much for joining. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in today. And I'll be back again in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm Dr. Tonya Harris Cornelius. Come back again in another couple of weeks for a brand new episode. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you soon.